I'm Brooklyn Kilcrease.
And I'm Mark Godwin.
And today we're here with Living History News.
We are here today in Plains, Georgia, home of the 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter.
We're going to be taking you around town and showing you some places that are special to the President, Miss Carter. You might even get to meet both of them. Jimmy Carter grew up in Archery, Georgia, about 4 miles from Plains. He worked on the farms getting up at 4 a.m., sometimes to feed the chickens, sweep the yards, and chop the wood for the fire on the stove. He also carried buckets of water to the workers on the cotton and peanut fields that his daddy owned, and when he got older, milked the cows every day.
Jimmy lived on the farm with his mama and daddy, his 2 sisters, Gloria and Ruth, and his brother Billy. This was his family and he loved them very much, but there were other people in Archery and Plains whom he felt were just as important as his family. Bishop William Decker Johnson, an African-American bishop in the AME Church, was one of the people who left an impression on the young Jimmy Carter. Julia Coleman, the principal of Plains High School, was another. Both of these taught him that there was more to expect out of life beside the small area he lived in. Mrs. Carter lived in Plains. She was a city girl, but Plains was a tiny town compared to the rest of the world. Her 7th grade teacher, Thelma MacArthur, opened the door to the outside world for Rosalind.
Guess what? We're in front of the President and Miss Carter's house in Plains. The road is blocked in front of the house and we had to get permission from the Secret Service to come in. I hope I don't forget my questions.
Here we go.
Hello, Mark. Hello, Brooklyn. Welcome. Come on in.
Yeah.
We're glad to have you.
How are you?
How y'all getting along?
Is it hot out there?
Yes, ma'am.
I can tell by looking at you, it's kind of hot. We're glad to have you.
You've had one of the biggest jobs in the world. Now that you can slow down, what are some of your favorite hobbies and some important projects you've got to work on?
One of the things that we've learned to do is to be a bird watcher. So we've got about 1,300 different species of birds on our list. We keep track every time we go to a foreign country. We try to do that. We walk a lot. We used to play tennis together. We go swimming together, and we learned downhill skiing together. I was 62 years old the first time I had skis on my feet, and Rosa was 59. So we've tried to do a lot of things together, but more recently I've done a lot of painting. Never had any instructions, but I like to paint, and I've made furniture.
Did you know that President Carter and Miss Carter spend most of their time right here in Plains? He's written over 30 books and she's written several. They live in the same house they built back in the 1960s, and the house is full of President Carter's paintings and furniture that he's made for Miss Carter.
Across the street is a pond that is full of fish. They both like to fly fish. One of Mrs. Carter's butterfly gardens is there, and they also have blueberries and plums. It's very clear to us that President and Mrs. Carter are very happy together. They've been married for 72 years.
Both President and Mrs. Carter went to Plains High School. I found out they both graduated in the 11th grade. There was no such thing as 12th grade then.
Mrs. Carter was 3 years behind President Carter in school, but they had most of the same teachers and studied the same subjects. Miss Julia Coleman was a special teacher that they both had. She challenged all of her students to be as much as they could be. She even told President Carter that he could be president one day if he wanted to be.
What was school like, and were you a good student?
School in Plains was really outstanding. We had one of the best high schools in the whole state of Georgia. It was a very competitive environment because our superintendent, Miss Julia Coleman, liked for students to compete with each other to see who was the best speller and who could write the best theme and a composition, who could do the best acting in the one-act plays, and who could debate better. So we were constantly competing with each other almost every week. So we learned to do things quite well in Plains, and then we would sometimes compete on a congressional district basis, and we would win that. Sometimes we win the state competition for academic purposes. So it was a very good school. And I would say that the main thing that I liked was reading. And Miss Julia had a list of 100 books of increasing difficulty that she would have on a list of books in the library. And I was the only student that ever read all of them. And I remember when I was 12 years old, I read War and Peace, which is a very advanced book. So I liked school very much, and I would say I was a good student.
My favorite subjects were always the math. I know I can't really think now about why I so much just did not like social studies. That was the one that I liked the least. But I always liked math. And when Jim and I got married, he was in the Navy for 7 years. After we got married, we came home and he started, because his father died, and he came home and took over the business. And I started keeping books for him, and I kept the books until a few years ago when I let somebody else do it. But I think that if I had had to choose an occupation, which I'm glad I never had to do, I would have been an accountant, because I love the numbers and having them balance and so forth. I wrote our checks when Jimmy was president in the White House.
Today, Plains High School serves as the visitor center for the Jimmy Carter National Historic Site. Exhibits throughout the school give the public an up-close look at the life of the Carters.
You can also see President Carter's Nobel Peace Prize.
How did it feel to win a Nobel Peace Prize?
And what does world peace mean to you?
I think that the main reason that I got it was the good work that the Carter Center has done, because we had a program in 80 different countries in the world at the Carter Center, and we were negotiating peace agreements. We were holding elections for people who were in trouble to promote democracy and freedom, and we were taking care of people who were afflicted with diseases that had been eliminated in the developed nations of the world. We were doing all those things, and so I think that the combination of my helping promote peace when I was in the White House and also the good work of the Carter Center combined is what gave me the Nobel Peace Prize. So peace to me means not just an absence of war, but a kind of a commitment on the part of an entire nation to preserve peace under almost every circumstance, and to avoid any attitude of hatred against other people who are different from you, and to try to get along with people, but still preserve your own principles and don't back down on things that are very important to your country. So that's not always an easy thing to achieve.
President Carter launched his campaign for president here in Plains. His office was at the old train depot, and visitors from all over the world came to Plains to see where he and Miss Carter lived.
The Carters came back the night he won his race and stood right here to thank all of the people who helped in the campaign. You know, we're standing where history was made.
What was your favorite thing about living in the White House?
It was a good life. And we had our family there with us, a good many children. Amy was there, and we had an upstairs floor, actually two. One upstairs that had us and Amy on it, and another one the third floor that had our boys were there. All of them but Jack were with us in the White House.
Amy had a real good life in the White House. She was just 9 years old when I became president. And she had been through the governor's term also in the governor's mansion, so she was quite accustomed to public life. And she went to a public school, not to a private school. And she had a lot of very interesting classmates in school that she would bring to the White House sometimes for the weekends to go swimming and to watch movies and things like that. So I think Amy enjoyed being in the White House as much as anybody.
President and Mrs. Carter could have lived anywhere they wanted when they left the White House. Their presidential library, along with the Carter Center, is in Atlanta, and they have an apartment back there. But they chose to come back home.
They wanted to live where their parents lived and where the most important people in their lives lived. They wanted to live where people believed in them and encouraged them to go as far as they could in life.
Imagine a young boy from a town of 600 who was encouraged by his family and teachers to be the best he could be, actually went out and did that, become the 39th President of the United States.
And along the way, he convinced the girl down the street to go with him, and she became the First Lady of the United States.
You know, we can all be whatever we set our minds to be, right?
Right.